It's another edition of Puck the Huskies podcast. It's brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, locally owned and operated by two diehard Huskies. That's Manny and Roger. And, of course, our guests here, they're going to need a lot of beer. They're going to need a lot of beer from you, Manny and Roger. Okay, they've been pouring the best local beer for the past 23 years. Manny's, Bodie, host of your other favorite beers. Tap room is open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Visit GeorgetownBeer.com. Jordan Reffett, Elise Woodward with us here on the show.
That's brutal.
Is that it? Are we done?
That's good.
All right. I'll see you next week, guys.
That's right.
I mean, I can, I can take it easy, or I
figured we'd skip.
Want to be respectful.
No shit.
I was hoping to avoid it entirely.
Fun. Have your fun. Everybody. I mean,
affirmative.
Yes, 100%. You were
Told
right.
you.
You were right, man. He's unreal. And what made me so mad is it made me think about you during the game. I was mad that I was thinking about you during the game. I was like, God, freaking Puckett was right. And I was like, why am I thinking about Jason Puckett during this football game? But John Mateer, I mean, just absolutely lights out. The guy is unreal. And really, I mean, you know, I can't even be mad because we had the Cougars in situations that you want to have him in. And then he goes and just does unreal things with his feet and breaks tackles and totally ruins my weekend. And yeah, he was everything and more as advertised. John Mateer was as advertised, and I was impressed.
Elise, were you thinking about me this past weekend?
All the time. Okay, I'm always thinking about you. Oh my God, yeah. I mean, I think the 3rd and 20. Everybody wants to talk about the 4th and 1 to end the game, but the 3rd and 20 was what, to me, that was a really deflating play for the Husky defense. The crazy thing from a UW perspective is they did a lot of really good things in the game. They outgained Wazoo. The penalties were egregious. They were undisciplined in a lot of areas. Special teams was not good. Their kickoff coverage continually allowed good field position, and that I think is something that it has to be addressed before they hit Big Ten play. And then, of course, the 4th and 1 call. But to me, the play that when the Huskies were having such a hard time scoring touchdowns, and they got in the red zone, and it was field goal, and Grady Gross is the man, and we all love him. Nobody wants to see him have 4 field goal attempts in a game, and they just could not. They kept shooting themselves in their foot. So to give up a touchdown in a situation at 3rd and 20, and the angles the guys were taking, and that was a play that, you know, and I think Mateer had a great game, and he reminded me in warm-ups, his throwing motion and kind of the way he moved of Jake Locker. He's a different type of quarterback than Jake Locker, but wearing number 10 and, you know, having these big, strong legs and being able to run and make people miss, he did have a little bit of Locker in him. But, yeah, I mean, hats off to the Wazoo. They took advantage of the egregious mistakes by the Washington Huskies.
I know what you're doing. You're doing that little Woody. I know I've known you for so long. You're doing that little backhanded compliment. I know what you're up to, and I don't. You know what? I don't like it. They took advantage of the mistakes. We're gonna get back to that. You guys have covered a lot of football a lot of time. At least you go first on this one. And I think there's a term for it. I've heard Alex Brink talk about this a lot before. It's like an 8-minute thing. It's like the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. But like that momentum shift, Elise, in the game is where a lot of coaches talk about it. And if you go back and look at it, and you touched on it, the 3rd and 20 quarterback draw touchdown at the end of the first half. They go into the half. Washington comes back out. They go down, but they settle for a field goal. Then Washington State gets the ball right back. They march down. Washington's got them stopped. 3rd and 18, 19, face mask penalty, gives them life, first down. And then they, after that, they go right down there, and they ended up scoring on that touchdown to Josh Meredith. And just that sequence from the quarterback draw to the 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 18 face mask that gives them new life to that touchdown. I mean, I get why coaches say that, right? I mean, they talk about that a lot.
Yep. Yeah, the middle 8. And
Middle 8.
I thought the 3rd and 20 was, I mean, if you're looking at big plays, what do you think is going to be coming? And the fact that it was a 3rd and 20, you think they'll probably draw, or they'll try, a fade on 3rd down and go for the field goal, though they'd already missed a field goal in the game. But I mean, it wasn't a surprise that Mateer's going to take off on his feet, and it was just a really poor job of tackling. It was a poor job of taking angles, and it bit him hardcore. And in a game where there was very few touchdowns scored by UW, that was a huge play for momentum for Wazoo. And you mentioned it, the 3rd and 18. I felt like there was a lot of times when Washington either could have got off the field or on offense could have extended drives, and the penalties were it's really hard to overcome 16 penalties. I don't care, whatever happens in the game, that's going to leave you really exposed. It's going to leave you exposed, and it did. The other thing that was, I know it was the type of coverage they're playing, but boy, it sure felt like Mateer had 1 Mississippi, 2. I mean, if you're playing backyard football, he sat back there, it felt like for days. And finally, I mean, he's literally pointing to guys, hey, go over here. I felt, the UW secondary had to cover guys for felt like 10 seconds. But, they just couldn't get the pressure on him to, make him uncomfortable often enough, that's for sure. And Mateer took advantage. He had a good game.
Jordan, we do revisionist history all the time, right? Monday morning quarterback, we look back. You always say, we could have done this, could have done that. Looking back at it, did they make a mistake in defending him? What should they, if you agree with that, what should they have tried to do differently?
Well, I don't think so. I think that, and I talked about this last week, 2nd and long, 3rd and long, it's screen draw all the time. That's what you expect is coming. Screen draw. You're usually running a TE stunt where your ends are coming in. So basically you're playing into that draw up the middle on a quarterback draw or a running back draw. But, the defense outside of John Mateer just making some miraculous plays and then some really bad penalties didn't really play that bad. They only gave up 1 touchdown in the second half, right? And really, if they were able to bottle up him on that 3rd and 20 at the end of the first half, and then not have that face mask penalty, those are 2 plays that John Mateer beat them because he's a better athlete, maybe than everybody on the field, right? So those are the things that you can't really out-scheme. You can't out-coach, right? But I also think that Wazoo wanted this football game a little more than the Huskies. And even to see, and this is just my personal thing, and to see Coach Fisch on the sideline, no emotion, pissed me off. Dickert's crying halfway through the game, not the whole game. I don't know, but he's
a crier, Jordan.
He's emotional, right? He's emotional, right? And I want to see Coach Fisch understand that, I want him pissed off on the penalties. I want him screaming and undressing a guy for a face mask or a jumping off sides, because those plays are really what determine the outcome of the game. They were pretty evenly matched football teams. I don't think that, Washington was way better and they should have came out and they choked the game away. I think that Wazoo has some guys. Obviously, John Mateer was a difference maker in that game. I think that the Huskies did not have a good game plan offensively. Obviously, if you can't score touchdowns when you're moving the ball like that, your game plan's not working. You're not getting the ball to the right guy, right? So, but defensively, I really have no qualms. I mean, my problem is with angles. My problem is with penalties, missed tackles. The defensive staff, I thought, did a pretty good job. They hit Mateer quite a few times. I mean, his jersey was ripped. I mean, he got rocked. I mean, there were some good things that happened, right? But like Elise said, the ones that hurt us is when he's, moving around in the pocket and then he points downfield and they get a 40-yard gain, or he has a 20-yard run or 30-yard run. Those 3 or 4 plays are what were the difference in the game, and John Mateer out-Mateered us, right? That's just the way it is. And the Huskies penalties didn't help, but I also think that the defense did not lose that game by any means at all.
Elise, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you give up 24 points and, they were averaging what? They put 70 on Portland State and 38 on Texas Tech. So, quick math on that. I mean, the defense did a nice job. You are in every game. You should win probably almost every game if you're only allowing 24 points. And their offense had some. It wasn't as if the offense was inept. They moved the ball, but again, it just comes down to the big plays when it's either convert and move the chains or convert and get a touchdown, and they just fell short. The false start penalties, the face masks, all kinds of stuff, just the little tiny details. I mean, I think the good news, if you're half full kind of person, is that if they quit shooting themselves in the foot and they continue to get better, they're going to be just fine. They're going to be able to beat a lot of teams. Or if you're glass half empty, you're like, whoa, you can't beat your rival in a game that you had them right where you wanted them. You can't make the big plays down the stretch. It's a concern. Like, where's it's a gut punch. And, I'm always a believer that early season, that's why it's so interesting with the Apple Cup. In the Apple Cup, we always know this is the team. By then what you're playing for, what's on the line, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses. And I still think for UW, it's out there to be determined. I don't know yet exactly how good this Washington football team is. I don't know. Like, we've seen signs that they can be really good. And then there's also things that make you have a cause for concern. So they need to be able to flush this. Don't trip on what's behind them, because the fan base obviously is, frustrated and disappointed with a whole bunch of things in that game. And if they're the players and the coaching staff, they got to just flush it. They can't, like you, Jordan, you want the coaching staff to be pissed during the game. And I would not argue with that. But they can't have that anger trickle over unless it's going to enable them to play better. And sometimes when you have that like frustration and disappointment, your confidence gets rocked. Guys start pointing fingers and getting pissed. And they have to avoid that. They have to stay positive about what the good things they did, or else, it's going to be difficult if you can't get off the map after a really disappointing loss in week 3.
Well, one thing that I've learned too about this team, and you probably know better than I do being around them all the time, is that, early on, this was a very cliquish team. You had the Arizona guys, right? That was a clique. You had the other transfers that maybe was a clique. Then you had the guys that stayed, right? Then you have the big dogs that were, played last year, played in the national championships. So it was kind of a weird dynamic. And this team is so new, and there's so many different pieces and a different coaching staff, and playing this game at, the third game of the season, like you said, it's a great point. We don't even know who the Huskies are right now, right? And I don't think they do. And that coaching staff is really under a lot of pressure to put everything together, put all those pieces back together. And it was a great time for the Cougars to catch the Huskies, let's be honest. And I think every Cougar fan would tell you that they're really happy they played us in the third game of the season. They like playing that Apple Cup early, at least the Cougars that I spoke to, because I think it gave them a better opportunity to win the game, which they did. But, these guys have to find a way, like you said, don't let it beat you twice, right? But they can go one of two ways. Right now, this football team can really learn from their mistakes and say, gosh, we could be really good. Wazoo's a pretty solid team. I mean, they're going to have an opportunity to maybe run the table, right? But if we can learn from those mistakes, we could have done all these things differently. Look at where we would have been if we would have done these things. Now let's do that moving forward against Northwestern and get better every week. And I think that's where they're at right now. It's two separate teams that can come out of this game. And that's up to the coaching staff. And like you said, they have to find a way to hone that in and make sure that they learn the right lessons from that game to move forward and get better. But there's a lot of good things that they can learn from it. So many great plays out there, so many good opportunities to get better. And that's what we're going to look for moving forward from this Husky team.
The only thing I'd push back on the narrative, and I agree, they're going to be most likely a better team at the end of the season. I think most teams are. They improve week after week after week. But I think so will Washington State. I mean, that's, you know what I mean? So I think, I mean, you have a quarterback who's making his third start. You have a true freshman running back. Your best wide receiver is playing at 65% because he's hurt. Your best wide receiver is not even playing right now. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of, I think they are going to be a different team if they would have played, in November. As I agree that I think Washington's going to be a different team when they
John
play.
John Matier, the way that he plays, I'd be really scared because I was scared with Jake Locker. Look at how he played his first year,
Sure.
how many times he got hurt his second year. So, I mean, there's also an opportunity. I mean, I remember playing the Apple Cup in 2006, and we had Carl Bonnell starting because Isaiah Stanback, who was another running quarterback, got hurt. And those are guys that, too, you got to be careful of. They take the wrong hit.
Sure.
And, but I agree with that. Everybody's going to get better week by week. But to me, this team's a little bit different, Puck, because of all the different parts that came into this team. Wazoo knew what they had. They knew what they had. It's a little different. Coach Dickert had his guys come back. We have 4 or 5 different clicks from different organizations, whole new coaching staff. There's so many different things I think this year particularly would have been different later in the season. But I don't know. It seems weird. I know several different Cougar fans that were really like, man, I'm glad we're playing. I really think this game's going to be more competitive playing early in the year. And I was like, okay, I don't know. Maybe it is.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean,
do you want to keep playing it? Because I know everybody cried, I don't want to play the Huskies.
Oh, I didn't want to play it. I didn't want to play in the beginning.
But you're happy you did now, right?
Well, I mean, after the fact you won, yeah. If we lost, no. I wanted to end it right now. But yeah, I mean, I think once I got in there, and I think that wore off months ago. I mean, but I think it really when I got in there at halftime, and I just realized what it means and what the game is. All the other stuff that's happened in the past year, that was over. That was over. It was a football game, and it was you want to beat your rival, and your blood pressure is through the roof, and my heart rate, because I have a watch, and it's 145 the entire game. That's not good. No. That's terrible.
Oh my God.
That's awful.
That's like go to the emergency room type of stuff, Puck.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. It's awful. It's just awful. I cannot stand still. It's just, it's too much. I don't know I can't do it. And it just freaks me out. And I just pace. It's like, and like when I know what I felt, because I told it to my daughter right when it happened. When he hit Jackson with 3 minutes to go, I'm just like, we let him off the hook. We had him dead. We had him dead. We had him dead. We had him dead. And we just let him off. And you can't give these teams that many chances to come back. I mean, you had the one pick, right? Then you had the other pick, then it was overturned. And I want to go back to the other pick here because a lot of penalties have been brought up here. The 16 penalties. They could have called 30 penalties. That was secondary.
Welcome
held
to
on
Big Ten football, baby.
That secondary held on every play, including that interception. By the way, go back and look at it. He's pulling his jersey. But whatever. There's lots. Like I said, there's penalties on every play.
There's penalties on every. But no, I did.
But what did you feel like?
Sloppy.
But 3 minutes to go when he hits Jordan. You go, and I want to hear what you have to say, Elise. When he hits Jackson, you think what? We're going to win the game?
100%, no doubt in my mind. We're winning the game. I mean, it was one of those things where I thought we won the game when he threw that ball to Boston on that slant and had it in his hands. In the end zone. It was a great play by the Cougar DB. But I thought, no, there's no way they're stopping us. I mean, we're at the 2-yard line. I mean, the game's over. Let's celebrate. I feel bad for the Cougs again, and no, I'm just kidding. But it was one of those things where, I had absolutely no doubt in my mind. So that's why it was so bad. I think this game, where I mean, literally, you talk about a gut punch. You talk about, I was sick for 48 hours. I mean, I'm talking physically ill. I couldn't eat. I mean, it was bad because I was so pissed.
I've been there. I know what you're talking about. It's awful. Yeah. You know what, Elise, you know what it was? What was when you're on the sideline and he hits Jackson? It's what? I mean, because you're working, but there's the fan in you.
Well, I mean, I just thought at that point, watching that, Giles Jackson, give that dude some credit. What has he caught? 24 balls on 24 targets this year?
The guy's unreal.
It's a record. He broke Larry Fitzgerald's record for catches. It's insane what he's done. He's been the man at 165 yards. I talked to him after the game, and he was so disappointed. You hate that when you play. That's the best game of his career as a Husky, and you get a loss. It's just that's the worst. I've been there. I've done that, but for him, that play was sensational. And you thought, okay, despite the fact that they've shot themselves in the foot, despite the fact that they've made so many mistakes, and it was two steps forward, one step back in so many ways on both sides of the ball, are they going to make the big play to come through? And of course, I thought about last year's Apple Cup and Roma Dunze and the guts that it took to call that and how heart-wrenching it was. And then you thought, okay, well, maybe, for UW, they're going to pull a little magic out of their hat again. And, I mean, the play call is what it is. On the sideline, that just had no chance. But the second that ball was snapped, there was no chance on that play. So that obviously was a disappointing play call.
You know what gets go ahead, Jordan. You want to follow up on that?
Well, I just want to talk about the play call, and because I've heard everybody from Brock, and Brock Heward and Coach Peterson weighing in on this, and the same thing, Brock's the same way I am, where it's like it was a terrible play call. It's not something that they do all the time. Our offensive line is not our strength. We don't go out and just run option all the time, number one, and we don't just bulldoze folks off the line of scrimmage. That's not what the Huskies are right now. But Coach Peterson, same thing. He said you got the right look. So the Cougs came out in the right look, and Huskies did not execute. So Coach Peterson is right there with Coach Fisch, which I totally hate what he came out and said because it just came off.
When you say
bad.
The right look, it was the right look for Washington?
Yes. So
that goes against any. I mean, that Peterson said that goes against any football analyst I've heard.
Well, there was. So Peterson, obviously Coach Fisch, and Brock agreed with me, but they thought that they were in the right look. The problem is that obviously, number one, the guard got blown up. Okay, and we can go through this. I wish I had a pen. The guard got blown up, and they actually tried to block the guy that they're supposed to leave free. Right, 52, right. The guy that made the play. And so there was nobody to actually have an opportunity to option off. But the whole thing, Cougars, I don't know, I haven't seen anything from Dickert, but it looked like they were slanting to the boundary. So I don't know, maybe you know something that I don't know.
Yeah, but I talked to Kyle Thornton this week. He's the linebacker who made it. He said that they had never seen film from them, but they went back 2 years ago, and Arizona had run the same play.
Yeah.
The same play to the same short side of the field. They didn't think that they would do it with Rodgers, but that they had, at least it was a possibility with how Coleman lined up, that they would do that.
Right. And that's what it looked like to me, is that because our guard got blown up right away. It looked like they were slanting to the boundary, dead on arrival, done with it. It's, and it is what it is, because what would have happened last year if Michael Penix hands that ball off instead of flips it to Rome and they stop him on 4th and 1?
Sure.
I mean, that same thing could have happened last year. So I don't want to get too wrapped up in it. But just to me, I always like a run pass option down there and spread them out and get them in a situation where you're on the offensive instead of getting everybody. There's not a lot of room. Spread them out, and see if you can get somebody open in the end zone. And if you can't, go get 2 yards with your feet, right? But the whole thing is over with now. And I don't want to dwell on it, because like you said, I don't want this to beat the Huskies 2 weeks in a row. They need to learn from the mistakes that they made in this game. Go beat Northwestern. Then you got a couple big games coming up against Rutgers and Michigan. But that play, whether they executed it or not, was not the right play call, because they don't run that play often. It's not what you call a groove play or a BB, bread and butter play. It's not something they do well. You run something that the guys don't have to think. You understand what I'm saying? So you don't have to, they practice that all week, right? They probably put that in during install, so they probably practice it for maybe the last 2 weeks, but it hasn't been something they've been doing all camp, right?
Yeah.
So you run something that the offensive line, everybody in that huddle doesn't even have to think. They know it's worked. They've ran it a million times, and it's something that they're not thinking, they're just doing, right? So that whole thing it looked like the guys were thinking too much on that play, because they kind of knew what to do, but it wasn't a bread and butter play. So I don't want to dwell on it too much. The Cougs stopped us. They stopped at number 52. Ought to get free beer for life there at the Coug, and that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a coaching perspective, when you're going out there and you're like, okay, this is what you have specials, you have stuff that it's like, okay, we're going to pull this out when we, feel really good about it. I don't that was not the right play. I agree with you. Just you want to play to your strengths, and having Will Rogers run the option to the boundary that's not your strength. Running into crowded spaces. They've had it work before, and so but I would say that coaches, when they're thinking in their mind, I thought maybe they overthought it a little bit because, like you said,
Shouldn't
you
have called
don't
a
want to
timeout.
just. You don't want to go out there and run something that they've already seen. You want to have the element of surprise, and you want to keep the defense on their heels and not up on their toes. But the element of surprise on that play was completely negated by the fact that it just wasn't going to work. Cougar defense made the big stop. Got to give him credit.
But he called the timeout and still went back to it. And then you can't call back-to-back timeouts anymore. I mean, I think one of the things that I think even makes it more egregious is the fact that he didn't have a play to check out of.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. Like if that's the look that you wanted to get, Jordan, then why would he check out of it? Like,
that's my thing. And so when you look at it, and like I said, we can draw. I'll draw it down. I'll do something later in the week because actually I don't want to dwell on it anymore. But let's
dwell on it more. I can show you that. Do you want to see the play? I can show it to you if you want to see it.
Because when you look at it, you're going to have.
This is like I don't want to see it.
No, I don't want to see it either. But you're going to have five. You're going to have five offensive line. Or excuse me, you're going to have five guys to block six. Right? You're going to have five to block six, and the sixth guy is the guy you option off of, right? So that's the way that the play is drawn up. But the problem is like I said, I agree. You should have been able to check out of it. Hey, boom, spread out, get to five wides, and let everybody run around. And then because then you put pressure on them when you do things like that. Pre-snap motion, there's so many things that they could have done differently. But like I said, I think, hey, we're the big bad Huskies, which we are, but right now our offensive line is not our strength. So we're going to come in and run it right down their throat. We're going to blow them off the ball. We're going to get 2 yards. I don't know. I didn't like it. I don't think that, like I said, I don't think that Coach Carroll liked it very much either. I don't think the problem is that he shouldn't have called the timeout. We should have we had them on their heels, in my opinion. Okay. We had them on their heels. There's 2 yards to go to score to win the game, or at least get close to win the game. And, there's a minute 12 left or whatever. Don't call a timeout. Don't give them an opportunity because Diggert's a defensive guy, and he's a smart dude, So I don't like the timeout either.
Yeah, he was going to call a timeout. You guys beat him to it.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, he was just waiting. They were waiting to see what it was, and then they were surprised that they had called the timeout, and so then he saved it. Yeah. Which is right. Elise is pivotal because you get the ball at the 1. No, and then I'm screaming up there. I'm like, can we please, for the love of God, get out of shotgun? Because I know it's going to happen. And if you go back and watch the first snap, it comes in hot. Yeah. And I'm like, you son of a bitch, can you just get under center and run up the center's ass? Because all these guys are celebrating around. Oh yeah, and I'm like, it's not over. It's not. I've been here. It's not over. None of this is over.
I did not think it was going to be over until those defensive penalties. I mean, it wasn't over. You were going to have to punt it, and you're going to have to punt it deep from your own end zone. And what could go wrong? What could go wrong?
Everything in the world. And I was going to wonder, what would they have done? Like I was
the penalties. No chance to even see the drama.
Did you get us? Okay, when you're working the sideline, can you hear it? Are you close enough to know what's going on? What are they going to call? Jordan, you kind of talked about it. And there's been this online, there's been this video showing Carroll apparently, and people are assuming he's disagreeing with the play call. Is there any sense? I don't know if he's
disagreeing. He was surprised, I think. He was surprised. So surprised, I think, was the word. And that's all I've seen. I don't have the inside information, and I don't want to create this big bubble, but I think that's also okay if he was surprised because he wants the Cougars to be surprised, right? Sure. I mean, this is one of those things where this whole thing bothers me so much because I think it's one of those plays, and for us especially, we'll remember this play for a long time. Right? We're going to remember this play for a long time because it's one of those Apple Cup type plays. Whether you're a Cougar or a Husky, if you're a Cougar, it's the greatest stand in the Cougar football history. Right?
It's called it's the stop.
The stop. Right?
Stop.
And so there's going to be a lot of great stories and things like that told about it. But unfortunately, like I said, as a Husky fan, It's all about what ifs and what could have been and what should have happened. And that's armchair quarterback stuff. But
Sure.
I was, along with, I think, some other guys, surprised. And I think some of coaches were surprised too.
So go ahead, Elise.
I was going to say armchair quarterback. I know I'm on the sideline talking to some different people on the sideline during the timeout. Okay, what are you going to call? What are you dialing up? And I'm saying I get the ball in the hands of Jonah Coleman somehow, some way. That's what I was like. Somehow, that's what I would have said. He's your best player. He needs 1.5 yards. That's what I was thinking. They were going to incorporate that somehow. And it's funny because, you mentioned Coach Carroll, and for a moment I was thinking Coach Carroll in the Super Bowl on the 1 yard line when they called the slant. I mean, I don't know why. When you said that initially, I was like, oh, yes. But it was Brennan Carroll and not Pete Carroll. But, it's tough. You're so close, yet you're so far away. But I like the run pass option, but I also like just having Jonah Coleman, be the beast man that he is.
Yeah, from my perspective, just in the section we were at, I mean, just everybody turned and said, well, Coleman's getting the ball.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no doubt. There's no doubt he's going to get the ball. So,
and so then that feeds it. Doesn't that feed into the fact, like, the element of surprise, right? They thought for sure, that everybody thinks it's going to Coleman because that is their strength, and he's the guy to get 1.5 yards when you need 1.5 yards. That they thought that, the counter to that would be the option with Rodgers, and obviously they overthought it. It didn't work.
So when I'm storming the field and jumping over the fence and almost tearing an ACL, meanwhile, Fisch is inside doing a press conference and accepting blame for it, saying, "Yeah, bad call, shouldn't have called it, stupid call." 24 hours later, then he kind of changes his tune and says, "No, we just didn't execute it." I mean, he went from taking the blame, then for some shifting that blame now to the players. What I don't know, Jordan. What changes? What changes in 24 hours?
Well, I think you watch the film. Number one, you watch the film. You're able to dissect every little thing and watch it frame by frame. And he's going to go through that with every guy on that offensive line. Obviously, everybody goes through that, each position group. And like I said, there's guys that are very confident that they had the right look in that particular situation. But like I said, I also think that the Cougs were slanting to the boundary in that situation, and that's why it got blown up so fast, number one. But it's one of those things where I wish, just from a fan, like, because for me, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother my fandom, Coach Fisch doing that. I'm gonna support the team. I'm going to be there for the guys, right? But I want Husky Stadium packed on Saturday, and I want to have big things, NIL coming. I want to have people donate money. And that, to me, the way that he came off in that particular press conference was a little smug, right? Was a little Jimmy Lake-ish, right? Where I'm always right. I know what I'm doing. And so that was one of those things where, but that's how all coaches are. I don't care if you're Coach DeBoer or Coach Peterson or whoever. I mean, coaches, they have an ego, right? They have an ego. That's just the way it is. So, but I think if you would have just stood with, I wish I would have called something different. Just didn't work out. Next question. That's what I would have loved to see. Move on to the next thing. Boom. But now everybody's dwelling on, my guys didn't execute. I called the right play. So the way that it was worded was, I think it was incorrect the way that he did that. I didn't like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard. I mean, he's been the smartest guy in the room since he was in college, trying to, get into college football. He's a smart dude. There's no question that, his football acumen is why he is the head coach at the University of Washington. So that play he wants back. He said that after the game. Why he kind of hedged that, I'm not sure. But, I think it is very difficult when you a head coach and you're the one that everybody's looking to all the time to also be humble and fall on your sword when it is required. I think, I always say this, it's the same about officials. If an official makes a bad call and the coach comes over, the manager, and is like, what the hell was that? And they're like, I think I might have missed that, coach. I apologize. I'm going to try to get the next one. What else is a coach going to say? You're like, well, then quit screwing up and get the next one, right? Same as a coach, right? It's just really hard to be like, you know what? I messed that one up. I wish I could have called something different. And my goal is to next play will be the best one I've ever called. And, and then there's nothing to say, right? It's hard it's hard when you are the smartest person in the room to not be like, well, I might not have made the smartest decision on that play. It's hard.
What did you guys think of all the packages for Williams? What'd you think of the usage and the timing of it?
I hated it. I love Demond Williams. I love him. I love the change of pace. I love it in certain situations. Will Rogers was cooking. Will Rogers was on the money. Will Rogers was in the zone. So that also, to me, is one of those things where I totally get the premise. I love that they're trying to get him in the game and that he can change a game with his feet. He can change a game in one play like a John Mateer, right? Sure. But in that situation, veteran quarterback, veteran leader is dropping dimes, finding guys downfield. It felt awkward in this game for me, right? And it wasn't a situation where I'm like, gosh, I hate that they bring in Demond Williams. I'm just like, man, Will Rogers has been dicing them up, between the 20s. Obviously, we don't have a lot of touchdowns right now. But that was one of those things where I think it broke a little bit of rhythm, if I'm being honest. But it's also one of those things where he didn't come in the game and really, I think, hurt the Huskies to where it's like, man, that lost him the game, right? But it's one of those things where when you have two quarterbacks, I also think this is one of these things. Somebody brought this up to me on Twitter. I don't know their name because I don't recall, and I'm not going to say
it. At Albert17892.
Yes. But I think that nowadays, in the way college football is, in NIL and transfer portal, is that you have to make sure you get in these elite guys that are backups, or where are they going to go, right? Sometimes they're going to start sniffing other programs. Not to say Demond would do that because he's obviously the next in line. He's a future at Washington. But I also believe that maybe is there. I got to keep my guys happy now. Back when I was playing, sit your ass down and don't move. You didn't even talk to the head coach. You did whatever you were told. Now it's like, well, I'm transferring, man. I'm good enough to play. I'm going to transfer, right? Yeah. And we don't have the depth right now to not keep our guys happy, But I don't know if that really factors in. I think it's one of those conspiracy theories, and Elise will probably bring me back to earth on this. But, I worry about that stuff because I don't want guys transfer, number one. So I understand what we're doing. But it's like that game, the way Rogers was playing, it just felt forced. You know what I mean? It kind of felt forced to me.
Yeah, I my thought is I didn't feel like it was forced, but I do think that Will Rogers was playing really good. And so when you're the backup, and Jordan, I don't know, when you were younger, if you can harken back to being a backup, if the only time you get thrown into the game is when the starter is screwing up, there's so much pressure on you because for whatever reason, if it's already kind of cooking and you can come in and move the chains and have a couple, plays at midfield where, hey, they're going to call them, have them do this and that. I think that allows the backup to have more success. And so I didn't mind when they did it. And Fisch explained why he kept him in at the second possession right before halftime. And, I was looking, I'm going to be honest, on the sideline. I'm like, oh, he's not going in for the second possession in a row. And I was thinking, well, they were deep in their own territory. You want to be careful. Maybe you can pop something with your feet. I understand the rationale behind it. But, yeah, there was a thought. I was like, well, you could also try to go deep with Will Rogers, who's been money today. So I was looking and I was, making sure that, okay, yeah, Will Rogers is healthy. There's nothing there. So I think a lot of people were like, well, but it's the third game in a row that they have used Demond Williams to come in off the bench in certain places at certain times. The interesting thing about it for me was if you're going to call the speed option or the option to the boundary, and you used Williams on that drive, and then they didn't use him, but they used Will Rogers for that. Now, maybe they thought if they put in Williams, then it would have tipped their hand. I don't know, but it is interesting that you got a dude that is literally electric with his wheels, that he wasn't the one. It's again, element of surprise.
Well, you've waited for it. Now you guys get your Big Ten debut. The mighty, hated Northwestern Wildcats.
Big rivalry. I was watching video from 1983 and 84.
Have they ever played?
83 and 84. I was
83
actually,
and 84,
I really was watching the tape. My buddy Lynn Manson put it out there, and Washington smoked them back in 83 and 84. But it's one of those things where it's Northwestern. The Huskies are in a position where they should win this game.
Sure.
They're playing at home. I'm hoping the crowd really shows up and gets behind these guys, because after last weekend and the penalties and the way that they lost, I really want to have Husky Stadium be rocking. I really do. I want to see the fans come back and really support the guys and really come out. And I want to see a fast start. I want to see a touchdown on the first drive. I want to see the guys be excited. I want this coaching staff to be excited. It's one of those things where first time Northwestern's been to Husky Stadium in 40 years or whatever it is. And it's pretty cool. I mean, it's the Big Ten, whether it's Northwestern or Ohio State, it's the Big Ten, and it's the opener, and it's a big game.
And then it's just it's going to be a murder's row after that. I mean, I don't know how good Rutgers is, but you got to go across the country to Rutgers, but then it's at home at Michigan, at Iowa, at Indiana, USC, at Penn State. I mean, that's a gauntlet.
Yeah,
that's a gauntlet. They've got to go on all those games back to back to back. All right, that was it. It's over, Elise. It's over. It's over, Jordan. It's over. I promise.
Good.
Yes, that was fair.
Good.
It was fair.
You were fine.
Fair
and balanced.
Did Jim Moore have to? Did he have to pay off all those bets?
It was,
no, by 9 or what?
It didn't, because they didn't win by more. They didn't win. They had to win by double digits.
It worked out good. And I was happy. I was just happy Jim wasn't out like $2,000 or something like that. So it worked out good.
He was good.
All right, good.
He was just drunk and barefoot at his granddaughter's birthday party.
He was out, but
he didn't go to the game.
No, he had his granddaughter had a birthday party.
I do remember hearing that. I was like, what? On the Apple Cup? What's going on, Jim?
That's what happened. He watched it there, but yeah.
He got to raise him better than that. Let's go. Come on, Jim.
That's what I said. All
Whose
right.
fault is that? That's Jim's fault.
That is Jim's fault. You're damn right. All right, we'll talk to you guys next week. It's brought to you by Georgetown Brewery. It's locally owned and operated. Manny and Roger, two diehard Husky fans who are crying this past week. They've been pouring the best local craft beer for the past 23 years. Manny's, Bodhisattva, Rogers, Lucille, all your great beers. Go enjoy them at the tap room. It's open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. Jordan Reffett, Elise Woodward. All right, we'll talk to you guys next week. We appreciate it. You can find it on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts, of course, at pucksports.com. See you guys.